Hey man, let me tell you something that most men never figure out, not because they're not smart, but because they're too eager to be seen, too hungry to be chosen, too desperate to be loved. They think attraction is created by doing more, giving more, being more, visible, more available, more expressive. But here's the truth, most men miss. The most powerful move you can make with a woman isn't loud, it isn't obvious, it isn't dramatic, it's invisible. It's the subtle act of not chasing what chases you back slowly. It's the art of allowing space to grow, of letting her come to you while you remain unmoved. That move, that energy, it doesn't spark short-term attraction, it creates long-term obsession. Because the harder you are to figure out, the deeper she falls, and the less you do to force her attention, the more she fights to keep yours. You see, obsession doesn't come from comfort, it comes from contrast. It's born in the tension between what she wants and what she can't fully get. And when you give her the feeling that you're interested but not invested, that you like her but you don't need her, that she matters but she doesn't define your mood, your day, your purpose, that's when the real magic happens. Because while other men are bending over backwards for her validation, you're quietly holding your center. You're not reacting, you're not chasing, you're not trying to be chosen, you are the choice. And that quiet confidence, man, it gets under her skin. It lingers in her thoughts. It builds tension every time she sees you, not giving her the emotional validation she's used to milking from weaker men. You become the exception, and the exception always becomes the obsession. The invisible power move is about patience. It's about knowing that silence isn't emptiness, it's presence. When you don't fill every moment with words, when you don't rush to clarify your feelings, when you don't collapse into emotional availability, the second she pulls away, you create mystery. And that mystery is everything. Because the more she thinks she knows you, the more she wants to solve you. But if you give her the answer too quickly, she moves on. Game over. Obsession dies in predictability. It dies when you hand her your emotional playbook. But if you play the long game, if you make her feel seen without revealing all of yourself, if you stay emotionally composed even when she tries to shake you, you win. Not in the moment, not in the day, but in the long term. That's when she starts replaying conversations, decoding your silences, and wondering why she can't stop thinking about you. This power isn't something you can fake. It's not about using gimmicks or pretending to be cold. It's about genuinely mastering your emotional state. When a man is fully centered, when he's no longer swayed by beauty, seduction, or attention, he becomes the rarest thing in the modern dating world, unshakable. And women feel that. It's not about being mean, it's not about being detached, it's about being unavailable to chaos. When she throws drama, you stay still. When she gets distant, you don't chase. When she questions your motives, you don't rush to explain. And that stillness makes her spin. Not because she's insecure, but because you've given her a challenge her ego isn't used to. Every woman has men trying to win her. Very few have a man who doesn't need to win her to feel whole. That's what drives her wild. That's what keeps her coming back. Let's get something straight. This isn't manipulation, it's alignment. When you're emotionally self-sufficient, you don't need to control her. You simply control yourself. And ironically, that's what gives you all the control. Because the person who needs the least always holds the power. The man who can walk away without hesitation, the man who doesn't argue for his worth, the man who doesn't emotionally spiral when she pulls away, that man becomes unforgettable. And you don't need to prove anything. Your absence becomes louder than any words. Your calm becomes more attractive than any compliment. And your emotional restraint becomes more seductive than any touch. That's the invisible power move, showing her, not through effort, but through energy, that you're the man who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't break. You simply stand and watch her fall. A man who learns how to pull back, not out of fear, not out of spite, but out of strength. He becomes a psychological riddle to a woman. And women love riddles, not because they enjoy being confused, but because a riddle demands presence. It demands emotional investment, and when a woman is emotionally invested in figuring you out, she starts thinking about you more than she realizes. She'll try to replay conversations, examine your behavior, ask subtle questions, and even test your reactions, but you don't react. You don't over-explain. You don't chase closure. That's the power. The moment you stop performing, stop proving, stop pursuing, you flip the script. You force her to step into the masculine energy of pursuit, and she will if you're worth it. Not because she wants to dominate, but because your self-control forces her to earn what every other man gives away too easily: certainty. There's a shift that happens when a woman realizes she's no longer the one being pursued, but the one doing the pursuing. That shift breaks her ego in the most subtle, irresistible way. She might not admit it. She might pretend she doesn't care. She might act unbothered, but inside she's restless, because deep down she can feel that your energy isn't clinging to hers, that you've mastered the one skill most men never do: emotional detachment without emotional cruelty. You're not punishing her, you're not playing games, you've simply placed your energy in something greater than her validation, your purpose, your mission, your self-worth. And that scares her. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're free. And freedom in a man is the most threatening and attractive quality a woman can encounter. Let me tell you this, man, when a woman starts to feel that she can't fully grasp you, when she starts to sense that there's more to you than she can access, that's when the obsession begins. And the best part, you don't have to force anything. You just live in alignment with your boundaries. You speak less and observe more. You don't rush to text back. You don't jump at every chance to see her. You don't make her the sun your world orbits around, because your world already has a sun: your vision, your work, your self-respect. You become the type of man who knows that being accessible is not the same as being available. Emotionally, mentally, physically, you give just enough to intrigue, never enough to fully satisfy. And the unsatisfied mind doesn't move on, it digs deeper. It becomes obsessed with solving the emotional mystery you've become. Here's what most men don't realize. Emotional mystery doesn't come from hiding who you are. It comes from revealing just enough. You show her that you're capable of depth, but you don't give her all of it. You let her feel that you're emotionally intelligent, but you don't let her emotionally dominate you. You allow moments of connection, but you don't allow yourself to get lost in them. And every time she thinks she's got you figured out, you move in a different direction. Not because you're unstable, but because you're layered, you're complex, you've lived, you've suffered, you've healed, you've built yourself brick by brick, and she can feel it. And that feeling becomes addictive, because women are not addicted to simplicity, they're addicted to complexity that feels safe. And a man who is emotionally composed, yet impossible to fully access, he becomes that addiction. The invisible power move is not about being unavailable. It's about being unpredictable in a way that reflects your self-mastery. You text back when you genuinely want to, not when you fear losing her. You engage when you're mentally present, not when you feel obligated. You walk away when your peace is disrupted, not when your ego is bruised. And you maintain a rhythm of presence and absence that keeps her wondering, not about your love, but about your depth. That rhythm doesn't come from manipulation, it comes from knowing your value. When you deeply, unshakably know your worth, you don't need to prove it to anyone. That creates a silent tension, a psychological gravity that pulls her in further, not because you're playing hard to get, but because she's finally met a man who's hard to forget. The problem with modern dating is that too many men try to build connection through excessive disclosure. They believe that telling her everything, showing every emotion, and offering their full attention at all times will build closeness. But the truth is, women don't fall for men who hand over their soul like it's a gift-wrapped package. They fall for the man who makes her earn his truth one layer at a time. She wants to feel like she's slowly unlocking you, not downloading your life story like a podcast. Every little mystery, every pause before a reply, every moment where you're present but not emotionally available, that creates tension. And it's that tension that draws her closer. She doesn't want to feel like she's reached the end of the story in the first chapter. She wants to feel like the book goes on forever, and only she gets to read it, one page at a time. Let's be real, man. The guys who chase hard, who try to fill every silence, who constantly reassure and confess and perform, they don't get obsession, they get used, they get tolerated. They become the guy she turns to when she's bored, when she needs attention, when the high-value man is giving her space. But the man who knows how to embrace silence, who can sit in the unknown without begging for clarity, that's the man who makes her nervous. Because silence forces her to hear her own thoughts. And if she's emotionally connected to you, those thoughts will spiral. Why hasn't he messaged me? What is he doing? Is he over me? Those questions don't appear when you're always available. They appear when you're calm, composed, and quietly distant. That quiet distance, that relaxed unpredictability, it becomes a storm in her mind. And here's the key. You don't do it to punish her. You do it to center yourself. You don't ignore her to make her chase. You ignore her to protect your time, your mind, your energy. You pull back, not because you're insecure, but because you know when you've been overgiving. That subtle but powerful discipline creates an emotional paradox. She starts to wonder how she went from being the prize to chasing a man who's too busy to be obsessed with her. And the truth is, she still is the prize, but only to men who have nothing else going for them. To you, she's an option, not a purpose. That shift in dynamic, that energetic reversal, it flips everything. Because the man who needs nothing from her becomes the man she wants everything from. Not because he's cruel, but because he's whole. Now, here's where it gets deeper. When you become the man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't need to respond to every emotional spike she throws at you, you awaken something primal in her. You awaken a fascination, not just sexual, not just emotional, but spiritual. She senses that you've reached a level of internal power most men never touch. A level where your self-worth isn't determined by whether or not she calls. A level where your validation doesn't live in her approval. That's not just attractive, it's magnetic. She starts to feel that being close to you is a privilege, that your attention is a reward. And when your attention becomes a reward, your absence becomes a punishment. But you're not using it as one, you're simply choosing peace. And that peace becomes the loudest message you can ever send. A woman can sense when your soul is too still to be shaken. That stillness, it's not indifference, it's presence without possession. You're there, you're listening, you're engaging, but you're not attaching, you're not clinging, you're not reaching, and she feels that. She feels it in the way you look at her without needing her to look back. She feels it in the way you hold your frame when she tests you. She feels it when you say no without explaining, when you leave without a show, when you return without apology. That kind of masculine restraint, that kind of invisible composure is the rarest form of power in today's world. And it builds a slow-burning obsession in her mind. Because women don't obsess over men they can control. They obsess over the ones they can't quite figure out. It's a strange paradox. The more you give to a woman early on, the less value it holds. Attention, affection, vulnerability, these things aren't bad, but when they're offered freely, before they've been earned, they become background noise. She starts to expect them. She takes them for granted. And eventually, she stops seeing them as signs of connection and starts seeing them as signs of weakness. But when you hold back, not out of fear, but out of choice, you train her to respect your presence. You teach her that your affection is not a guarantee, but a privilege. You teach her that your love is something sacred, not something sprayed across every text and call. That's the invisible power move, showing her you can care without needing, showing her you can love without losing your edge. That kind of restraint is unforgettable. See, most men are terrified of losing a woman, so they try to secure her through excess. They overshare, overcommit, and overexpose their emotions. But high-value men know that obsession doesn't grow in comfort, it grows in uncertainty. It grows in the space between interactions, in the moments where she wonders what you're doing, who you're becoming, and why you're not chasing her like the rest. Obsession doesn't grow when she's full, it grows when she's hungry. And the only way to make her hungry is to feed her just enough to taste you, but not enough to consume you. You offer glimpses, not the whole picture. A moment of eye contact, a brief laugh, a deep conversation, and then nothing. You disappear into your purpose, your peace, your work. That contrast, that emotional push-pull, creates a rhythm in her mind that she can't escape. And let's not confuse this with manipulation. This is not about playing games, it's about reclaiming your emotional gravity. When you stop handing out your energy to every attractive woman who shows interest, you become selective, and that selectiveness radiates. She can feel it in your tone, in your timing, in your refusal to overshare. You're not hiding, you're choosing what to reveal. That's the difference. A man who hides is afraid. A man who chooses to stay silent is powerful. That silence becomes loaded with meaning. It says, "I'm not here to entertain you, I'm here to live fully. And if you're aligned with that, you can join me. If not, I'll keep walking." That quiet confidence, it's the kind of power that makes her heartbeat speed up, even when you say nothing, especially when you say nothing. There's something deeply seductive about a man who's unpredictable, not because he's chaotic, but because he's centered. He's stable, but not routine. He shows up when it matters, but never lingers too long. He listens without giving away too much. He compliments without gushing. He texts back, but not instantly. His life is clearly full, so if he's giving her time, it's intentional. That sense of being chosen, but never fully having you, creates an emotional intensity she can't replicate with anyone else. You become the mental puzzle she keeps revisiting long after the conversation ends. And the most powerful part, you didn't have to prove anything. You didn't have to flex. You just remained rooted in yourself, allowing her to experience your presence without begging for connection. And in that subtle, quiet way, you planted a seed of obsession. Now let's talk about consistency. Not the kind that texts "good morning" every day, but the kind that never breaks character. You are always grounded, always self-possessed, always calm under pressure, even when she pulls back, even when she tests you, even when she goes quiet. That unwavering energy, it tells her everything she needs to know. That you don't panic, you don't chase, you don't collapse just because her mood shifts, and that scares her in the best way. It scares her because it makes her realize you're not emotionally dependent on her. It scares her because she knows that if she walks away, you'll be fine, maybe even better. And that fear, that realization, that's what creates long-term obsession. Not because you manipulated her, but because you showed her something she's rarely seen, a man who can want her and walk away if needed. There's a unique intensity in the mind of a woman when she senses that a man is both emotionally available and completely untethered. That duality of being open yet not attached is the essence of magnetic presence. She feels that you can connect deeply in one moment and detach just as effortlessly in the next, and it scrambles her emotional compass. She can't predict your next move, not because you're being evasive, but because your world isn't orbiting around her validation. When you have that kind of self-containment, she starts chasing clarity. She wants to know more, feel more, understand you better, because now the dynamic has shifted. You're not asking her to invest, you're letting her discover why she wants to. And that shift, that quiet reversal of the usual emotional current, makes you unforgettable in a way that lingers long after the texts stop and the room is empty. The invisible power move also lies in the way you handle her emotional chaos. Most men either get pulled into her storm or run from it entirely. But you observe it, you sit with it, you acknowledge it without reacting to it. When she throws attitude, you remain unshaken. When she tries to bait you into drama, you remain composed. When she pulls back, you don't chase. You match the distance, and in doing that, you send her a signal more powerful than any words could deliver. You are the eye of the storm. You're not here to be managed or controlled. You're here on your own terms. And if she wants access to your world, she has to earn it. Not through manipulation, but through peace. That subtle emotional boundary, that's the line she won't be able to stop thinking about. You have to understand, women are sensory creatures. They remember how you made them feel. And when you embody restraint, when you carry yourself with a controlled intensity, it creates a slow burn in her psychology. She starts noticing how rare it is to be around a man who doesn't explain himself, doesn't compete for her attention, and doesn't flood her with constant availability. It becomes addicting. She wonders what you're doing when you're not around. She checks your stories, reads into your silences, and obsesses over the smallest cues. That's the invisible pull, because now you're not just another guy trying to win her over. You're the man who already knows his value, and you're simply inviting her to recognize it for herself. That's when she starts chasing, not because she has to, but because she can't help it. Another overlooked part of this power move is your discipline. When she sees that you don't break routine for her, that you don't cancel plans just because she's available, that you still prioritize your work, your workouts, your mission, that creates gravity. It sends a deep primal message: I lead my life. Women aren't drawn to a man because he gives her all his time. They're drawn to the man who guards his time, because it means that when he gives it, it's meaningful. So when you show up, she listens differently. When you speak, she tunes in. When you leave, she notices the silence. Why? Because your presence is not diluted by desperation, it's enriched by purpose. And that contrast between distance and intimacy, it's what leaves her hooked long after the conversation ends. Let's talk about the final layer of this power, emotional clarity without emotional exposure. See, you don't have to be cold or closed off. You can be kind, you can be playful, you can even show affection, but you do it in a way that never relinquishes control of your emotional center. You don't spiral if she pulls back. You don't fall apart if she's hot and cold. You remain grounded. And that's what unnerves her in the most seductive way, because she realizes that you're not afraid to care, but you're even less afraid to walk away. That balance is rare. That's what creates the long-term obsession. Not some pickup line, not some fake persona. Just the simple, silent, unwavering power of a man who knows himself so well that no woman could ever define him. There's a moment that every woman experiences when she realizes you're not like the others, and it doesn't come when you impress her, flatter her, or give her constant attention. It comes in the silence after she expected you to react, and you didn't. It comes in the pause where she thought she had you emotionally locked in, but you didn't bite. That moment, it plants a seed, a question. Why isn't he chasing? Why isn't he trying harder? Why does it feel like I'm the one trying to figure him out now? That reversal is the moment everything changes. You've triggered something deeper than attraction. You've created a void, a psychological space where she realizes you're not emotionally dependent on her presence, and now her mind fills that space with imagination, overthinking, curiosity. That's where obsession begins, not in presence but in absence. What you're doing here is not manipulation, it's alignment. You're aligning your energy with truth, not neediness. And women respect truth, they feel it. When a man moves with calm indifference, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, she feels that energy like gravity. It's not that you're trying to be mysterious, it's that you genuinely don't feel the need to overshare, overcommit, or overextend just to earn affection. And the paradox is this: the less you try to pull her in, the more she finds herself magnetically drawn to you. You've become the rare breed of man who doesn't advertise his value, he just is valuable. You're the kind of man who could love deeply, but never need desperately. And that distinction, that's what burns into her memory. Because every time she compares you to someone else, they all start to fall short. Now here's the silent killer, the way you exit. Whether it's leaving a date, ending a conversation, or disappearing for a few days to focus on your mission, the way you leave tells her everything she needs to know. Weak men linger, they double text, they fish for affirmation. But you vanish like fog when the sun rises. No announcement, no need for closure, just gone, with purpose. And it drives her wild. Why? Because it leaves the conversation unfinished. And when something's unfinished, it stays open in the mind. That's what keeps her up at night. That's what makes her stalk your socials, reread your messages, try to decode your silences. Your ability to not fill every space becomes the very thing that makes her want to chase you harder. Because now, she feels something rare, uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, desire. There's an art to how you re-enter her life after your silence. Not with explanations, not with apologies, just with presence. Calm, grounded, unshaken presence. She'll test you, maybe subtly, maybe boldly, but you'll pass every test with the same invisible power, unreactiveness. You don't explain your distance, you don't defend your decisions, you just show up like a man who never left himself. And that right there is why she starts seeing you as more than just a guy she dated or flirted with. You become an enigma, a puzzle she wants to solve but never can. And the more she tries to unravel you, the deeper she falls into that spiral of fascination. Not because you played games, but because you refused to play any. Your stillness, your silence, your sovereignty, those were the moves that made her obsessed. So let's bring it full circle. The invisible power move that creates long-term obsession isn't about making her chase, it's about making her feel. Feel your absence, feel your presence, feel your depth, and feel your boundaries. It's about building a life so full, so purpose-driven, so emotionally controlled, that no woman ever becomes the center of it, but the right woman wants to be part of it. You don't give her your soul on a platter, you let her earn proximity to it, layer by layer, moment by moment. And even when she thinks she knows you, she doesn't. Because the man she's obsessed with isn't trying to be understood. He's just being real. He's the mystery she can touch, but never fully grasp. And that, brother, is the true seduction. Not with words, not with effort, but with silence, discipline, and the unshakable energy of a man who never loses himself chasing anyone else.